Zack Sabre Jr. comes out, and then the music plays, and out comes Claudio Castagnoli to just a thunderous reaction. And he's got a new theme that Mikey Ruckus described as 1812 Overture meets Andrew WK. And this theme is called Uppercut Swingfany.
Okay, interesting.
Yes.
I'll get used to it.
What'd you think of the reaction here that he got? This was huge.
You know, despite the fact that I think everybody knew what was going on, it reminded me very much of the CM Punk thing, you know, like everybody knew it, but once it happened and you got to see the visual confirmation, this crowd reacted as big as I think if it was a surprise. It still brings to mind the question, like whether or not they should have announced beforehand, like whether or not it would have ultimately helped the buy rate a bit more, or if like keeping it a surprise it had other benefits that we're not necessarily thinking about.
If the buys come in low, do you think that would like let's say it's something like 110, okay? Mm-hmm. Do you think like Claudio would have made enough of a difference, or do you think that the surprise and that intrigue meant more now that we have seen what it all ultimately was?
His name is interesting because like I don't think he's certainly not at the level of star of a Bryan or a CM Punk, you know, in WWE. So like how big of an attraction to the mainstream is he going to be? But is he the difference between like, you know, 110 to 135, for instance, for like a, you know, a diehard AEW fan? Maybe. It's hard for me to say.
Yeah, like I think there's a way you could have set it up on Wednesday that this would have been really like one of the bigger things going into the show that you knew. But at the same time, if I'm someone that's been following all this and by Wednesday, I'm not buying this pay-per-view, I don't know if that announcement is changing my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
But it's like that's what you're debating here. Like the surprise we've seen, like that intrigue sometimes it does work. But this is also a company that has done it quite a bit.
Also, the speculation of like who it's going to be, I think, is always fun. Like, and it's always good for just people talking about your show, I imagine.
Yeah, well, this one to me, it was two names for most people, and I don't think it was going to be anyone else.
But we were still asking the question, you know, like who's it going to be? Like,
and Shibata runs out and makes it a three-way.
Him in the Blackpool Combat Club, him in the Blood and Guts. Yeah, I would sign up for that. He's already faced Zack once. You know, this is a rematch. This would be a rematch. Yeah.
So it's a huge reaction he receives, and then they started off running European uppercut and Ricola bomb, and he gets a 2 count. And I'm sure there were people that thought, man, they're just going to have.
He hit the neutralizer. Actually, it was the WWE.
You're right. This was the neutralizer, and they called it the Ricola bomb, and gets the 2 count, and the crowd is just amped right away, thinking that it was going to end that quickly. And Claudio runs into the rail, missing the European uppercut. So Zack goes after the knee. He applies a Fujiwara. He's twisting at the arm and applies a triangle. Pretty much whatever Claudio would go to do, Zack just had a submission ready and was just going to wear this guy down. And he applies this triangle. They go over the top rope and Zack keeps it applied. So then eventually Claudio with the triangle applied, and this is doable. I did this all the time in jiu-jitsu. Sure. Walked up the steps with the triangle and then just dumps him into the ring.
I would love to show this spot to like an MMA like analyst. Like I would show this to Robin Black and be like, "Can you? What do you think of this?" No, I'm not, and I'm not joking. Like I'm not shitting on it. It was awesome. Like you're taking
exactly. And I think you and me are probably going to have the exact same point here. Way is that some of the people who get like so up in arms about like realism, yeah. This is not realistic, and it was fucking very cool,
fun, and creative,
and no one was complaining about this being unrealistic, and it just shows you like a character like a Claudio can do stuff like this, and a guy like an Orange Cassidy, he has to do so much more that he has to get over this stigma with people, and it's silly.
I'll tell you why. I think everybody should be impressed by this. It's because it's an incredibly impressive physical feat to lift somebody like with one arm, like to even lift somebody in a triangle position it requires a great deal of strength to, first of all, successfully complete the roll over the top rope while still keeping the position is incredible. To pick them up again and walking up the steps to throw the guy out like is mind blowing. And just so incredibly like fun, you know.
Maybe Zack's got to work on his triangle though. That is a conclusion you can come to.
It's fine, sure.
Claudio calls for the swing, but Zack goes to a guillotine. And this was great. The way they just teased the swing and Zack was constantly avoiding it. And as Zack applies the octopus, Bryce is counting. And Kevin Kelly brings up that Zack knows that Bryce is not going to call for a disqualification here. So he can just keep going. And Excalibur brings up, I know that Claudio has a New Japan World subscription. He knows all about Zack. And the crowd boos as Zack continues to avoid the swing and finally hits it. And the crowd starts to count, but then he has to let go because of his arm. So he is selling the effects of the submissions. And he goes for a sharpshooter. It's countered to a heel hook. Claudio goes back to the sharpshooter into a double stomp. And then Zack is using up kicks, attacks the arm and traps it, goes to the mat, and there's a rope break. And we get kicks to the chest of Claudio, and he just eats them over and over.
He's going for yes kicks. As a shout out to Brian. Yeah.
As Zack is hitting him with them. And then the first attempt at the Ricola bomb is countered into a European clutch for a 2 count, pop-up uppercut, and then discus lariat, and hits the Ricola bomb in 18 minutes and 28 seconds. And Claudio wins his AEW debut.
Oh, great match. And if this was people's match of the night, I would totally understand. This had sort of like the freshness and the specialness attached to it of, I think the great debuts in of a long time ago. For somebody like Claudio, I think so often we think of like, it seems kind of rare that we get like debut matches that are complete surprises, right? Usually people come in, they'll have like a little segment, they'll like show their face, they might cut a promo, but for a guy to just step in and to step in a very much a dream match scenario here between Claudio and Zack.
This was like their version of like the closest of like Seth and Cody this year that you could compare it to.
Sure,
like a match that had no build up, and they had to come out. And like I said, when that match happened, like when you debut, it's sort of like everyone gets it out of their system, the surprise pop, but then you've got to get them a second time for a match. And they went 18 here, just like Cody and Seth went long. That's why I was so impressed with the Mania match, that they had a tremendous match. And that's after like this crowd spent themselves on just the big pop that, oh my God, Cody's here. This was the same with Claudio here. And then you had to keep them like really engaged for another 18 and a half minutes.
You certainly do have the crowd on your side when they're already interested and engaged in the match. But I mean, for that reason, pressures are arguably that much bigger, for you to not just deliver a good match, but a great match. And I thought these two did that. It was a wonderful way to debut Claudio Castagnoli on such a big stage. He comes out of this looking like such a big deal. He looked amazing, fully unleashed here, going against another person who's like, if there's any disappointment in me, it's the fact that I'm a Zack fan, and that like some of the specialness to like Brian versus Zack has been taken away a little bit because, well, hey, his buddy beat him, right? But still, like, this was a match that I don't think you could have had any other finish, but like, having Claudio debut to win. Zack was given a lot.
This was a really hard match to book, knowing the match you want to get to, and what were your options here? Like beating Claudio to me was not the answer, because you've got Blood and Guts this week, and he's the new debuting star. I think once we get to Danielson and Zack Sabre Jr., I think everyone's interest will be at the exact same level it was before this one. I'm not too concerned about that, but it was an issue going into this one. Then backstage, Claudio was interviewed, and Yoshihashi walked in and welcomed him here to Chicago. And then Claudio hit him with a fireball and said, "I'm taking your spot in the G1." I was like, okay, perfect. Now everything's perfect. He's also a wizard. Could you have imagined? That was honestly the first thing I thought when this guy came out. I was like, how can this guy get into the G1?
I'm guessing for guys like him, he probably wants to maximize his bump card, for the remainder of his career. And is G1 the most necessary thing for his career at this point?
We will see what his frequency is going to be. He's got another match on Wednesday, so we will see how he turns things around.